Over this past year, I have really come to appreciate and love technology. This past year with COVID 19, we've had to use technology in so many different ways, and I've learned so much about it, and I want to continue to learn more and more about it. My biggest thing is that I don't think technology should be a replacement for a teacher for instruction, but it should be used more so to enhance the instruction. And there's various ways that you can go about doing this. In both of my student teaching placements, we utilized Google Classroom and Google Suite entirely. We had everything there because there were kids that were in school, there were kids that were at home and going back and forth, and we just needed that continuity. So I am very familiar with the whole Google platform, which I love and I think it's great. I'm also very familiar with the Microsoft products. Here at Grove City College, we utilize Microsoft Teams. So I've been able to learn a lot about that and a lot about Google Suite. So I do feel like I have a well-rounded view on the different applications that are out there. While I was teaching in person, a technology application that I loved using, and I did use it fairly often, was Nearpod. Now, Nearpod is very unique because it is a presentation application, but it gets sent to all of the students' devices. So I have it up on my board, but they're also following along on their individual devices as well. For example, this also circles back to student engagement. It was a great way to keep my students engaged. So I did a grammar unit on sentences, and we were talking about, the correct punctuation, the capitalization, all of the things that a good sentence needs, a subject, a predicate. Um, so I would have these sentences in my presentation that had a ton of mistakes in them. So the sentence would go up and it would pop up on each student's screen, and they had 30 seconds to a minute to correct as many errors as they could. So they would be correcting these errors, and then as soon as they would submit it, it would pop up on my screen, my big screen, so that we could all see them. Now I had the students' names turned off so that you couldn't see who did what or who was making mistakes, just for that confidentiality. But when the time was up, we were able to all look at these sentences together and we could see which ones were done correctly or which ones still needed a little bit more work. And it was a really good way for the students to every single one of them to be engaged and interact with that. And it really enhanced our grammar lesson. Similarly, I created a different Nearpod while I was doing my Because of Winn-Dixie unit and talking about the narrative elements. We played this setting game that I came up with that the kids had about 30 seconds. I would give them a little scenario, and they would either have to draw a picture or write a description of this setting. And the big thing that I was trying to get them to do was get a time and a place because those are the two elements of setting. So they would have to do this, and this game that wasn't a competition whatsoever turned into a competition for them that they were all excited about. They wanted to get it in first, but they were also really focused on doing the best that they could. And I think it's because this technology allowed them to be so engaged in the lesson that we were doing. And again, after all of the responses were submitted, we could look and see which ones were done well or which ones needed a little bit of work still. Additionally, while we were doing some virtual learning, because we did have a couple weeks where we had to be completely online, I was in the middle of doing a water cycle unit whenever we left in-person classes. So to continue that, over the weekend when I was at home, I went ahead and made a couple of really cool science experiment videos of myself. So I made these and turned them into Google Slides. And in my Google Slides, I had a page where we had a little recap on the topic that we were talking about that day. I put in my video that I had made, and lastly, I put in a couple of interactive questions that the students would have to go through and answer. So then each student got sent a copy of this via Google Classroom, and they were able to edit their own responses. And it was really cool to go back once they had turned these in and then to look at their responses. And I could see things that they picked up on or areas where maybe I still needed to touch on a little bit more. And this was just a good way to utilize the technology that I had at the time because it was a little bit different and a bit of a change of pace than just logging onto the Google Meet and talking to the kids and them maybe talking, maybe answering. They could do it on their own time, but I still was able to see all of their responses and see that they were learning. One more example I have. This was actually from this past semester when I was working with the Early Childhood Center here on campus. We were doing a unit on community helpers, so police officers, firefighters, doctors, nurses, and my focus for the day was on nurses. And I read them a story about nurses, but I wanted to make it a little bit more meaningful and a little more personal. And the idea was for them to take something away from the lesson that made them think that they're a community helper too, and they can help keep their community safe and healthy. So my sister is a nurse at Children's Hospital, so I called her up and I got her to make a little video for the students. And in her video, she just said what her job was, how she helps kids, and how they could help other people around them too. And I played this video for them in class, and they really loved it because she was this nurse, this really cool nurse, and it was just different from me just talking at them again. So, with all of these examples, I feel like technology really can be utilized to enhance instruction, not replace it. And it is very important to use because it's the day and age that we're in right now. So, we really have to hop on board with it.